In the last continent on Earth, Zathik, the sun was dim and tainted with a vapor of blood. The older gods and elder demons had returned, and the necromancers and magicians were legendary. Among them was Namara, who imposed his black yoke on Xylac and deemed himself the peer of Thassadon, lord of evil. Namara was once Narthos, a beggar boy who grew up in Ummaus with a hatred for the cruel city. He was trampled by Prince Xodala's palfrey and left for dead. Narthos later became the pupil of wizard Ufalak in Tassun, learning dark magic and forming a bond with Thassadon. When Ufalak died, Narthos took the name Namara and became a powerful sorcerer, seeking revenge against Xodala. Meanwhile, Xodala became emperor of Xylac after his father's death and ruled with cruelty and luxury. One day, Namara returned to Ummaus, and during a great feast given by Xodala, he built a colossal building in the eastern common area of the palace, unnoticed by the sleeping revelers. In the city of Ummaus, Emperor Xodala was shocked to see a new, magnificent building erected overnight, rivaling his own palace. The building was made of white marble, with black onyx and porphyry details, and was guarded by a giant skeleton. The skeleton introduced itself as the servant of Namara, a powerful seer and magician. Xodala was intimidated and ordered his chamberlains to inquire about Namara's intentions. The skeleton replied that Namara had come to dwell beside the emperor. The news of Namara's arrival spread fear throughout the city, as he was known for his dark magic and terrifying entities that served him. People believed that Namara had built his house with the help of devils and that its foundations were laid on the gates of hell. They also whispered about his concubines and the strange creatures that served him. As time passed, the people of Ummaus grew accustomed to Namara's presence, but they still feared him. Meanwhile, Xodala tried to ignore the sorcerer, but strange occurrences continued to happen. One evening, the sound of galloping horses echoed through the palace gardens, but no horses were seen. The emperor was enraged and frightened by this new wonder. Emperor Xodala's palace was disrupted when strange horse hooves appeared, damaging his gardens and disturbing his sleep. Though everyone suspected sorcerer Namara, there was no proof. Xodala threatened to punish Namara, but took no action. The night brought more hoof sounds, echoing through the palace, and the marks were found on the marble floors. The emperor's women were frightened, and the palace was shadowed by an ominous feeling. The hoof sounds continued, filling the palace with iron clatterings, and the marks were found everywhere. The people of Ummaus and Xylac deemed it an ominous prodigy, with different interpretations. Xodala called upon priests, magicians, and soothsayers to explain the haunting, but they disagreed. He sent them to Namara's mansion, where they received an invitation to a feast, with a message that the haunting was a sign of something forgotten, to be revealed at a destined hour. In the dark of night, prophets and magicians slipped away from Ummaus, leaving behind Namara, who sat alone in his great hall. Before him stood a massive statue of Thassadon, an archdemon depicted as a warrior, crafted by a devil-begotten sculptor for the evil King Farnak of Tassun. Namara had found the statue in the desert-sunken palace of Farnak and had set it up in his own home, where it would often speak to him through its mouth. Namara asked Thassadon for something, but the fiend refused, enraging Namara, who demanded again in a bold voice. Thassadon replied, refusing to aid Namara in his vengeance against Emperor Xodala, who had unknowingly served Thassadon well. Namara threatened to summon other powers to aid him, despite Thassadon's warning. Namara then went to a high dome in his house, where he whispered a pre-human rune and made a contract with fearsome entities that defied Thassadon's will. Meanwhile, Emperor Xodala awoke, troubled by Namara's invitation. His advisor Obxa suggested he attend, curious about the wizard's devil-built house. Xodala consulted his chamberlains, courtiers, and priests, who were divided on whether to accept or decline the invitation. Emperor Xodala debated with priests about accepting an invitation from wizard Namara. Priests argued it was harmless and would confirm their holy wisdom. Xodala was irresolute, so he called for wine, but it didn't help him decide. Suddenly, a commotion broke out at the palace gates, and an array of mummies and skeletons, dressed in royal attire, entered the hall. They announced they were sent by Namara to escort Xodala to a feast. The mummies and skeletons were accompanied by rodent monsters, furry creatures, and other strange beings. Zodala, under some sort of spell, rose from his throne and followed the procession, accompanied by his household, including the girl Obxa. They arrived at Namara's house, where they were greeted by dragonman creatures and entered a vast, multi-columned hall filled with strange and terrifying beings, including kingly cadavers, lamias, chimeras, and dog-headed devils. At the end of the hall, Namara sat alone at a table, surrounded by flames and a black image of Thassadon. In a dark and eerie atmosphere, Zodala, accompanied by Obxa, entered the hall of Namara, a necromancer. Namara welcomed them with an iron-voiced greeting, offering them seats at his table. As they sat, Zodala noticed a dark, corpse-like hand pouring wine for him, wearing a signet ring similar to his own. A figure resembling his father, Pitime, stood beside him, bringing back guilty memories of his father's death. Oxa was served by a dreadful ministrant, a flayed and eyeless corpse resembling her first lover. Namara offered them a strange, dark wine and a meal of boar meat spiced with balsams from the tomb. The necromancer's knowledge of their past crimes and his dark magic filled them with dread. To enliven the feast, Namara summoned Shigul's singers and musicians, playing a lament that left Zodala's heart desolate. The music was followed by a dance performance, where Zodala's palace inmates were trussed on the floor, and skeletons, mummies, and other creatures danced above them in an evil saraband. In the dark, eerie halls of Namara's palace, Emperor Zodala and his companion Obxa were treated to a terrifying spectacle. The dancers, growing taller and heavier, trampled the floor like grapes, and the music drowned out the cries of Zodala's people. Namara presented the emperor with a royal spectacle, leading him to a balcony overlooking the city. From there, Namara summoned the monstrous coursers of Thamagorgos, Lord of the Abyss, to trample Zodala's empire. The coursers, resembling giant stallions, brought destruction upon Umaus, crushing buildings and killing its inhabitants. Namara revealed that he was once a beggar boy named Narthos, whom Zodala's palfrey had trampled. As the city lay in ruins, Namara led Zodala to an inner chamber, where he prepared a dark, star-cold liquid in an alembic. He gave Zodala a goblet, bidding him to drink, but the emperor hesitated, fearing poison. In a dark chamber, Emperor Zodala drank a deadly draught offered by the necromancer Namara, and his soul floated free. As he watched, his own body arose, now possessed by Namara's spirit, and transformed into a hybrid creature with a stallion's legs. The creature approached Obxa, Zodala's beloved, who was bound at the altar of Thassadon. Zodala's soul, trapped in the statue of Thassadon, witnessed the horror and felt a surge of manhood and wrath. A voice within the statue, claiming to be Thassadon, granted Zodala the power to strike down the abomination wearing his flesh. With a mighty mace, Zodala destroyed the creature. As the spirit of Zodala escaped the statue, Namara's soul returned to his own body, cursed by Thassadon for his blasphemies. Namara, driven by a desire for revenge, arose and descended to the altar, where he saw his own reflection in a diamond mirror and attacked it, lost in his madness. Namara fought his own image in a magical mirror, using a powerful sword. Despite his efforts, the sword broke, but the image remained unharmed. Enraged, Namara used the sword's hilt to smash the mirror, causing precious gems to shatter and fall to the ground. Meanwhile, Obxa, lying on an altar, watched the battle and laughed maniacally. Above the chaos, the sound of thunder grew louder as the mighty stallions of Thamagorgos returned, threatening to destroy the last remaining house they had previously spared.